He's got to take his top off. Someone's got to take the top off.
Got to take a top
If
off.
it can't be a lady, make the guy have it.
Well, what about Jeff Bridges?
We got to see someone's nipples.
What if the master computer is hosting pornography on the outside of the world? Sir,
what if her program is Leisure Suit Larry?
Larry, you got any slutty programs in there?
Right now is the time for me to leave everything I know behind.
Dear 1980s, we're back. Rummaging through your RAM, looking for memories. In particular, a memory called Tron, a memory which I personally have never had and perhaps should have left unfound in the vastness of Hollywood cyberspace. That being said, I don't remember what episode number this is, but
100.
Good question. What are we on?
I think it's 51, maybe?
We are
50,
48.
48, yeah.
Okay,
I knew we hadn't
40.
crossed into 50
all right,
yet.
All right, well, I was optimistic there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people, well, all 7 people listening probably assume we've made about 4 episodes. So
Negative.
I don't want to know how many episodes we've done in the 1980s, but this is yet another one, 1982, Tron. Starring...
For the 50th episode, I will make a graph that tells what years.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Can I introduce who's in Tron?
Yes.
If you like.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll enter, the main cast of Tron, which is the dude, Jeff Bridges, as Kevin Flynn, the video game enthusiast and genius software engineer.
Beefcake model.
Yeah. Curious, I should have looked how old he was in this. A very young Jeff Bridges. Then you got Bruce Boxlightner as Alan Bradley, who, he's Tron, right?
He's Tron.
Yeah, he's Tron.
The aforementioned Tron.
Inside the computer, he is Tron.
He is Tron.
Outside
yes.
the computer, he's just some boring
The
asshole
titular Tron.
at
The titular
a
Tron,
factory
yeah.
somewhere. Yeah.
And David Warner, but I want to call him David Vanna. Which is not as Ed Dillinger, the really old software engineer, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that a little bit.
British or
Cindy
something.
Morgan, I guess best known as Lora, but also plays Yori inside the mainframe, whatever.
Yeah.
But I would say most people would know her as Lacey Underall from Caddyshack, her other role, and then Bernard Hughes,
cleverly named.
yeah, Lacey Underall, Bernard Hughes as the gatekeeper guy, Dr. Walter Gibbs, Dan Shore as Ram, which I think was a really funny name. And the rest of the people don't really matter because they're just randos. But that's the main cast of this ridiculous Disney science fiction film, which I had never seen before. I don't know what I was expecting, but this was an interesting watch. I'll admit I messaged the guys and I was like, am I watching like a remastered version? Because I'd never seen this, and I was expecting like a super low budget, crappy sci-fi movie, and it has a certain look to it that I was like, this looks way up more modern than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be super cheesy.
For 82, yeah.
I mean, it is super cheesy and dated, but I was expecting way worse, and I was like, this looks really glossy and like, what's going on? Like, did I download like a remaster? Like, and it was the original. So I was pleasantly surprised, like when I saw that. But, I didn't know anything about this movie. I know it's a cult classic, but I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts on. I guess Josh was the only person who had seen this, right?
I mean, I grew up on this. This is
you really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I do not remember the first time I saw it. Honestly, it's just always been with me. Like my entire life, a Frisbee has been an identity disc. First and foremost, like as a kid, like that's what it's used for.
It's an
like
identity.
You're playing
is that
Tron.
what they're called in the movie? I didn't even catch that.
Really? Yeah.
Identity disc.
Out here, they call clay pigeons. Shoot them suckers.
This movie's just always been with me. Like it's just I took it for granted. It's like Star Wars. It's just always been there. So.
I actually had 3 rumpled middle-aged men with scraggly beards and Atari shirts bust through the door of my house and take away my Gen X card when they saw that I was watching Tron for the first time and I'd never seen it before. Like, you're not part of us, man. You're not.
It's
part
one
of
those
movement.
movies where I'm it's part of the culture. Like if you're a sci-fi fan, but kind of maybe much like Dune. Like it just never appealed to me. I mean, I was a Star Wars fan, but that being said, I don't know anything about Star Trek. So I guess I was like, there's like this camp where I was like in this one sci-fi camp and not
our blind spots.
360 sci-fi guy, like there's, you have that friend that's seen every fucking sci-fi movie.
I'm not that friend. Yeah. Like I know stuff about Star Trek. I'm like, I can name most of the main characters.
Yeah.
I know the Khan guy,
the Khan guy.
Yeah. It's Ricardo Montalban in rubber face makeup or whatever.
Khan.
Yeah, but they're like, remember when they saved the whales? I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Like,
remember when they freed Willie?
Died? No, I don't remember.
I threw up in Star Trek 4.
On purpose.
Why?
No, I ate too many. What are those cinnamon?
Cinnamon
candies,
like Red Hots.
Like Red Hots.
The Red Hots, maybe.
I thought you were gonna say it was a reaction to the movie.
No,
just like saying, like,
no, it was a great movie. I really like Star Trek 4. But.
I threw up in McDonald's. I was violently ill before I went into McDonald's, but I still blame McDonald's.
It's just my primary memory is like I got really sick in Star Trek 4.
It's imprinted itself upon you.
I kind of want to talk about the premise is actually pretty straightforward, right? So you've got the in terms of like in terms of the world, right? You have this, computers are, which is actually kind of oddly kind of parallels today. There's always like every decade this computers are going to take over the world kind of thing. Like now it's AI, but in early 80s computers were still massive mainframes, right? And they're going to take over. So anyways, the world is, there's a massive supercomputer that's been built. That was the genesis was video games, but now it's sort of become self-aware kind of, which is like the Terminator 2 Judgment Day premise, which is, this computer's become self-aware, but it was originally started by applications written by Jeff Bridges as video games. But this thing has taken on its own, the evil CEO basically is turned this thing to be sort of self-aware to this massive computer program that eats other programs. And, now it's this massive monolith application. And, Jeff Bridges, the original software engineer, is now a hacker. And so he's trying to go in and prove the fact that this whole idea was originally his and not the evil CEO guys or senior executive guys, whatever.
It's so naive. Like, it's just so, like, what do you, like, okay, what do you do with that information, right?
I know. He's like,
you're still lost.
He's like,
his lawyers will just drown you.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to show that my name came first on the evidence, and then I'm going to print it out on dot matrix paper, man. And then I'm going to bring down the system, man.
Where are you going to like tell people about it?
I know.
Newspapers, because the internet hasn't been invented yet.
I know. Like, this is such a terrible plan. Like, they'll just say, like, you could print anything on dot matrix print paper. You could just fucking type out, I built this game and that one too. And my name is, whatever.
This predates nerds sitting around computers caring about things.
I know.
There's no path forward for Flynn in this at all.
No, it's got nothing.
What's really interesting about this is that it's got cool stuff, but it's interesting that like the computer components that are kind of techie are also wrong and weird. Like they'll have this whole movie's about like computers, but then like the password is password.
Master.
Master. It's like,
all caps.
Wait, come on, really?
Genius.
Like
Not case sensitive at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a genius guy.
It's like shit like that where you're like, really? Like the password's master? Like, like it's just
master.
Like, all right,
master.
that's kind of dumb, but just stuff like that. Or and the whole thing is, the central control program or whatever, which I guess. I was reading somewhere, I guess it's a little more nuanced, where it parallels like society, right? Like a democratic system versus like
fascism.
Dictatorship
of like, inside the main, inside, it's not Tron, inside the computer. Because you have two classes of people, right? The users who are outside of the computer world and then inside, right? And then, but one is becoming like a dictatorship between this master control program, and then they're trying to liberate it outside, which is the democracy kind of thing. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool, you know, of a spin, but it's kind of ham-handed this whole movie. But I don't know. My initial impressions, and we can go around the horn and talk about it a little bit, is I don't know where I stand on this movie. Like what it parallels to me a little bit, the first thing that comes to my mind is that movie Avatar by James Cameron, where it's like, I can see how this was way ahead of its time, and it's doing a lot of cool stuff, but the story is absolute garbage. but it's doing like a cool showcase of stuff. It's like being at like an expo, and you're like, oh man, this is all really cool, but like you kind of get lost in the cinematic cracked glow stick of this movie. You're like, what the fuck is going on?
Cracked glow stick.
Yeah, it's like you know, it's just like, oh, that's kind of cool for 1982. Yeah, and this is all new in the context, but I'm like, I have no fucking idea what's going on. Like,
it's funny because like I feel like this is a lot like, not, you know, it's not at all like, but in some ways like Escape from New York, where, you know, I think the story is actually on paper really good. You know, you're like, there's a guy and he created a system and he got locked out of his own creation, and this evil, you know, centered guy is using the computer to take over the world. He wants to hack in, but he gets sucked into the computer, and he lives as a digital person inside the computer, and he has to destroy the system from within, which was like the old revolutionary thing. Like, you get into the system and then you destroy it from within. And, you know, and there's races on light cycles, and there's fights, and there's gladiator like shit. And like, you know, they have to smash the thing or the computer's going to take over the world, you know, and you're like, that's a great fucking story. You know, like
the consequences inside the game,
right? Like Escape from New York. It's like Manhattan's a prison and the world's falling apart, and he has to break into Manhattan and save the president. And you're like, yeah, what a great fucking idea. And then in like Escape from New York, the story is then boring though. Like a lot of it is just like plodding fucking, you know, story where nothing really happens, and the pace is so fucking slow, and there's all this time for people to stop and like chit chat, and you're like, aren't you racing to save the world from a supercomputer that's turned evil? Like, or are you
man, there's a water cooler.
He's like, I'm just gonna talk to this digital actuary guy who's obviously
you gotta play 2D highlight
slain any second now. Yeah, you know, to the highlight game. Those are the scoops. We all watched it, and Pearl was like, what the heck are those? I was like, oh, the scoops. They're playing like highlight. I had to try to explain highlight to it.
That's a game that's really popular in Miami
in the 1980s, but not
now. You know, Tron created it.
It was in the opening credits of Miami Vice. Yeah.
It's weird. It's like a showcase for stuff, and then I kind of lost the thread of what's going on. Because
I think it tried really hard. But it doesn't
fail,
a reasonable
though?
job. Well, I don't know. It sets up like this weird mysticism, like this weird religion. They call them like religious fanatics, which I find it's kind of a fascinating angle. But yeah,
the users? Because
I remember him like saying inside the computer, there's this whole trying to paint anyone who's trying to overthrow, you know, the MCP. As a religious fanatic, because they believe in the users as some sort of higher being. And then Flynn comes down and gets sucked in. And it's a sort of weird mixture of science fiction, but also, you know, fantasy. I think almost like Neil Gaiman type stories where simply believing in it makes these realities. And it's like that concept, but the angle is it's all computers. And at the time, 1982, computers were starting to like enter the mainstream, and the possibility of people owning a computer in their home was becoming more of a real thing. So it was accessible. So it was a new angle and a new time. And yeah, the story is kind of secondary. It's all about the visual pop. So
yeah,
I think too, like, you know, to people who are into computers, like the programmers and people that were like in the prototypical computer world, like before it became a mainstream thing for everybody, it was kind of a religion. Like they worked so hard at it, and it was like their temple that they worshipped at. And I thought that was an interesting part of this movie, is that like the creator is getting sucked into the computer world is kind of like Christ coming down from the clouds and walking among, the people that once worshipped him, so, there is a lot of stuff going on in this, and it is like opening up computers as a new religion, and something that could take over everything.
For the record,
yeah,
Christ driving a tank would be pretty sweet.
Would be pretty awesome. I know. That would make the church iconography would be so much cooler, right? Like,
I thought that was a very cool and kind of clever premise in the context of the time, where the live action people are programs. I thought that was kind of a cool angle, that these are programs inside of the computer, and then you have the context of the users outside, and then they have their program counterpart inside of the computer that's acting on their behalf, which I thought was really kind of cool in a way. Like the one guy says, or was it Ram says, he was like a piece of health insurance software or something.
Yeah,
it's
all about it. It's so sweet.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. But one thing that didn't make any sense to me, and I don't know if it made sense to you guys, or maybe I just missed it, is why is Sark, who's the evil program, like training programs and making them fight? There's no reasoning.
Like, oh yeah, you sucked him in the computer, and he's like, and now I want him to fight. I don't want to kill him. I want him to go through a series of gladiator games, and he should die from gladiator games, but not from regular just us killing him. And you're like, why? Like, fucking why? Like, he's your biggest threat.
It would have been a really short movie if he had just like hit the button at that time in the first battle.
But again, you're like, just have something else happen, like have him get in there and then escape as they're about to kill him. And, I don't know.
The only thing I could think of was that they try to strengthen the programs, because then like the MCP absorbs them later, like they'll be better.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or it was just like an exhibition to show off highlight cool shit. I don't know.
I know, it's totally it. Yeah, like just cop to it, right? Because otherwise they just zap him and suck his energy up away. Like, oh, great, we got the best guy. Let's suck him up into the system right now. Perfect. Like, I didn't think we were getting that easy.
Yeah, there's a ton of those things. There's just, if you think about it for more than a second, you're like, huh. like the whole it's very James Bond-esque, where they're on a ship and the ship's gonna travel through a thing that will just derez everything line by line, and that's how he's going to kill him.
That's what
everything on the ship will die.
He was like, the most dangerous person to ever enter this sphere. What we'll do is, now that we have him trapped, we'll just leave him on the ship and leave, and surely the thing that we wish to happen will happen, and he will derez and be gone. Or he could get out and really fuck everything, but we're just gonna leave him. We're gonna leave him.
I mean, ultimately, it's a kids movie from the 80s, and it's dealing. Yeah, it's PG. It came out at the same time as like E.T. and all those others. Like the audience for it was kids.
Kids are into computers. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
kids are the Atari system.
Like everybody you see at Flynn's Arcade who's not a weird adult. That's the audience, is all those teenage kids who, like, because video games were like really like arcades were a thing back then. Like, so whereas when Star Wars came out, like the marketing for it was all about the action figure, because that was the audience, was to buy those action figures. But 82, like, this was just getting off the ground. What are you going to market? What's big? What's hot? Video games. And video games ended up making way more money than the movie. Like the Tron games, like there was the light cycle game, and there was the frisbee game. So I think it's all that. Like that's the audience, and so I think it can be forgiven a little bit for the time. It's writing about a subject that at that time most Americans, most of the world didn't know shit about, and so it's all mystical, it's all magical, and so they're gonna fudge. I think that there probably were people on set who were brought in to at least know what the jargon means, but once it goes through several like committees and Disney, they've sanitized it, and it loses its proper meaning, but it serves the end of making a movie. So.
I guess I didn't know it was focused at kids, but it's not it wasn't a commercial flop. I mean, it wasn't like a success.
It's okay,
but it's okay. Yeah,
it was like what on that list you showed? It was like 26th, the highest rating, great grossing movie of 1982 or something.
I mean, I personally would have seen Porky's.
It was 20 points below Porky's. Yeah. Speaking of stiff.
Yeah, but like E.T. and Wrath of Khan and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Man, I forgot that was like 82. I think that was later.
It's a big year for movies.
Damn, dude. Yeah.
So Tron had no hope of like competing against those. But
and computers hadn't taken over the world like they actually have.
Yeah, to the point, there's actually a 2-hour documentary on the making of the original Tron. I watched about 30 minutes of it before I fell asleep. Yeah. But
like the movie itself,
It talked, and it does talk about the I watched the origin part of it and kind of where this all started. Actually, it all started in Boston, dude.
Boston.
The animator, the original director and animator is from Boston. But anyways, it was kind of showing how like pretty much everyone passed on this except for Disney, because Disney was essentially looking for an angle into like the arcade world. Like they were pretty much old. I mean, like they were making movies like Herbie the Love Bug at this time, so they were trying to find they were trying to find something that kids would then like relate to, that to kind of usher in the new era of like the 80s and all this sort of stuff. So they took a shot at they were like, let's do this. And it was interesting because the conversations at Disney were sort of like the old guard being like, we have no fucking idea what any of this stuff is, and I don't know. And then they got these young people being like, this is cool, let's work on it. And so it was kind of this weird like bridging of a gap of like, okay, we don't really know what the fuck any of this means, but it looks cool, so let's go for it. And I guess it panned out.
Toilet?
Yeah, skibbity toilet. Are you saying Tron has Riz?
Something about
you from Ohio? Yeah, right.
So I mean, smart of Disney.
No cap. No cap.
Disney's like,
okay,
it's about computers. Bet. So yeah, it sounds like to that point, like they were trying to capitalize on the arcade generation of kids, and video games, and
this is how like mid 90s alternative bands were unleashed upon the world. It's just they were like, I don't know, we need more of that stuff that the kids like. They just signed all these like crappy, like copycat bands and shat them out on the world.
Are you saying this is the third eye blind of 80s cinema?
Bush.
Sci-fi? This is the Matchbox 20?
This is the Matchbox 20 of yeah. I mean, to an extent, it's a reach, right? It's like, hey, we're known for an old mouse and his weird dog, and we need to seem hipper,
Yeah.
So, I don't know, glowing people and little light bikes that bang into each other, and you de-rezzing instead of killing. That makes it Disney because you can't die, really. It's just you're rezzed or you're de-rezzed, you see.
You're rezzed. That should be a word kids use,
like,
rezzing.
Oh, crap. Yeah.
What are you going to do? Look it up on the internet?
Yeah. I love how like their idea of like top-notch, technological stuff is like taking apart an orange and putting it back. You're like, but it was an orange and now it's an orange. So
it's a digital orange.
I could do that by just taking the orange off the pedestal and then putting it back on. I love how Jeff Bridges just like when he gets shot with the laser into the computer, he just like has his rump like sticking out. His butt is like right up in the laser, and he's like, I wonder what's going on with this computer. And he's just like totally lined up for the thing. And then it shoots him, and it takes like a minute and a half to dissolve him. And he's like,
Yeah, they spent a lot of money on that effect right there.
They were taking Jeff Bridges apart.
With my finger, it's like,
it's like wow,
so
funny.
I'm gonna go get some popcorn. I'll be right back.
I know, right? I'm sure this is thrilling on some level, but
Josh was throwing up. Oh,
I will be coming back later, maybe.
I have a soft spot for this because this is a period of time, I think, where Disney was willing to do like these kind of crazy movies. Like I think of like The Black Hole, which was in the late 70s. Yeah. And then I think The Secret of Nim was somewhere in between there. It was before Tron, which is a dark as fuck cartoon. But Disney just doesn't do things like that anymore. They're like they're not willing to like do these like weird experimental things in order to, they're just making live action versions of all the cartoons.
They were failing. And that is when you get new ideas. If you want to. You can either keep cranking out Herbie the Love Bug and the Cat from Outer Space and fucking Flubber and Son of Flubber until you die, or you can be like, God, we need new ideas, or we're gonna die, and you come up with something like Tron.
Yeah.
And I will say, like Brian said earlier, I watched this movie expecting it to be like, like little figurines dancing in front of a fucking blue screen, because they used blue screens back then, and like a little like light cycle, and you can see the wires. But I was like, it looks pretty fucking good, like the people inside the digital world, it looks kind of awesome.
Visually striking, yeah.
Like the light cycle bike races and stuff. I was like, that still looks pretty fucking cool to me. I don't know, like it's neat. The only problem is it's boring. Like it looks good, but there's
spoken like a man who's never been on a 10-speed and pretended he was on a light cycle.
There are exciting things that happen in this movie, but I feel like they had a great team for the visuals, and they had a good story. The lines are not good, and many of the actors are not good. Jeff Bridges is so much better than everyone else. It's not even funny. You're just like, okay, I guess you hired one actor, like for whatever else he's done. Bruce Boxlightner guy, or whatever the fuck his name is, like 17 syllable guy, isn't good in this. Maybe he's good in other things, but not in this. And Panty Laces, whatever the fuck her name is from Caddyshack, is she's just like a person. In this, she doesn't really act. She just kisses two dudes and deconstructs an orange and then runs a lot, and you're like, I don't know what she's doing.
I like Ram.
Like
Dan Shore, like he plays Billy the Kid and Bill and Ted.
He's the actuary. He dies randomly.
He's the actuary. So he dies.
Yeah, he's the actuary. Yeah,
I really love helping people plan for their future.
It was funny.
It's so sweet.
It was funny because it's like it's unexpected. You expect everyone to be an outlaw or something, and he's like, I just want people to do better on their tax returns, or whatever the hell his job was. And I was like,
Jeff Bridges is like, yeah, great.
Yeah, great. We're all going to die. Good job. Yeah, like I feel like, but with him, it's like Ensign Smith from the Star Treks, where you're like, he's going to die in like a minute, and they're like, oh no, he died. And you're like, you're the only one who's surprised.
What happened to him?
Even he knew he was going to die.
Also, his death scene was so ridiculous. Like he's fine. He wakes up and he's like, hey, and he's like, oh no, what happened? Like
some affliction in the digital world.
and later on, like Flynn has these powers, and like Cindy Morgan's character is about to like pass out, and he brings her back. Like, where the fuck were you with Ram, dude?
I know, with anyone.
That dude could have really helped.
I know. And then she says, and this is how you know there's great writing involved. She says, you brought me back. And you're like,
why?
Yes, we did just see that, but thank you for explaining. It's so dumb, like there's a lot of dumb lines in this, and the acting isn't very good. It's all about the visuals. The visuals are really neat, though. I will say. Yeah. I was very pleasantly surprised by how this movie looked. It was cool.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I think someone could have made something today and been like, "Oh, it's retro," or like analog, as you said. But I was expecting far worse. Like I was very impressed for the time. Yeah. That entire like light cycle scene for the game. I mean, it was very much just like a I don't remember. Were video games that good at that point? I don't know.
It looks exactly like that.
Some of them were. Some of them weren't.
Yeah.
Some of the games are just like, it looks like a melting turd, and it's supposed to be a tank, and it's like, blip, blip. And you're like, what the fuck? And in the same year, Space Invaders came out, and there were like all these different ship types, and they're like moving and running around and like shooting, and there's like missiles coming up, and it's like this flying saucer. You're like, these guys had their shit together. Who made the Turd Tank game? Like
Turd Tank Enterprises.
Strangely didn't survive the digital age.
They got consumed by the MCP.
They got de-resed in a second.
They Like the evil guy?
In the game, the evil guy in the game. He's like,
Sark.
I'm going to make you suffer. And he has like the axe and stuff. Like he was kind of funny. He was like at least he had life to him, you know, which is ironic because he's in the video game. But you're like, at least he's got some like, you know, energy about him, and like
he's the
Jeff
mouth
Bridges,
of Sauron.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges is good in this, but also they don't really give him that much to do. You know, like because there are scenes like in the real world when he's talking to the guy who becomes Tron, Bruce Boxlightner or whatever, and you know
Sidney Morgan,
who used to date him, and then he's dating the other guy now, and her job was just to date people in this movie, I guess.
Yeah,
and
does she still leave her clothes all over the floor?
I know, it's like this is like executives talking about what's a woman gonna do in the Tron movie. I don't know. She dates both the guys. They go to his apartment or something, and when he takes his shirt off, and he's like, "Who wants to see a little beefcake?" You're like, "What? It's Jeff Bridges." But he's sitting between them, and you're like, "Well, two of these people suck, and he's good." But his lines are all like offhand. You know, he's like, yeah, I made these games, and then the guy stole them, and now I'm going to prove that I'm a hacker, you know? Who wants a Pepsi? Who wants a Coke?
I like the little throwaway lines like, what did you ever see in this guy?
I know. He can act unlike someone else in the room.
He's got an arcade.
I know, exactly. He's got his own. He's got a shirt with his name on it. His own name. He's awesome.
Devil may care hackers with nice nipples are your thing.
He takes his shirt off a lot, you know?
Hey, Alan, here's a roll of quarters. Why don't you go make yourself busy downstairs while me and...
Just like, here, since you make yourself useful, take off your top.
Yeah, it's just like, ever seen this guy? She's like, I loved his brain. That's like such 80s lines.
Wait,
like, ever seen this guy
who loves brains? That's
it's
me.
Like, it's the cliche, like the girl dated the smart, uncouth guy that is now dating the pencil neck nerd.
Yeah, right, exactly.
He has his act together.
In a romantic comedy, she'd be leaving the pencil neck nerd for the guy who she should be with by the end of the movie. Yeah, but I feel like, you know.
Inside the computer, she kisses them both, which I thought.
I know, she kisses them both. I'm like, what the fuck? That's what I was saying. Like, the executive's like,
women very well.
She's got to do some kissing, right? There's got to be a little kissing in this thing, right?
She thought the one guy was dead. She's like, well, we'll smooch this guy.
Moving on.
Executives are like, we're up against Porky's, fellas. Porky's. We got to have a little kissing at least in this thing.
It's PG.
No tongue.
You think
it's Disney.
Like, so, do you think she should take a digital top off? I don't know. We're just gonna float there.
What if they she's naked, but they reconstitute two oranges in front of her breasts, and then you know they're there, but you don't see them because the oranges, but the visual's there. You know what I'm saying?
What if we re-res some nipples on it? I'm just saying.
What if the oranges had nipples? That'd be a good idea. Get around all the censors.
These don't sound like Disney executives to me. These sound like Cinemax executives.
Yeah, exactly. This is like when they hire Cinemax executives for Disney because they're floundering so bad. And they're like, I don't know. He's got to take his top off. Someone's got to take the top off.
Got to take a top
if
off.
It can't be a lady, make the guy have it.
Well, what about Jeff Bridges?
We got to see someone's nipples.
What about Sark? Can Sark get naked?
Sark? What about the old guy? Oh, yeah, you're right. No one wants to see the old guy's nipples.
Flynn!
Flynn!
What if the master computer is hosting pornography on the outside of the world? Sir, this is
what
Disney.
if her program is Leisure Suit Larry?
You got any slutty programs in there? Sleazy. They should not let us make Tron.
I know, right?
Yeah, let's not do the remake.
I think we all have to agree that the bad guy's British, though, okay? It's just, no one else in the movie's British except the bad guy. For some reason.
I like how his office has this Star Trek keyboard.
Cool table.
Yeah.
Everything lights up. And when he first walks in there, there's just some other guy standing there, and he's like, "Thank you, that'll be enough." And he just leaves.
They have no security. The guy just
who's that guy? You're not gonna explain who he was.
Just trying to hack into this computer here.
Sorry, he looks out my windows.
Go get me that job. Chinese literacy file.
Yeah. And then he has the conversation with the MCP for the first time, and then they shut down all the security, every program in the entire company, to keep out Flynn. Yeah. And then the guy who plays Tron later on, his program he's all shut out of the computer. Yeah. And then it's like, come see the big boss because email hasn't been fucking invented yet.
No, exactly.
To let you know that you've been locked out. You got to go talk to the fucking executive to find out what's going on. That's how ridiculous this is.
It's hilarious too, because he like the evil British guy brings him in, and you know, real world Tron, whatever the fuck his name is, brings him in, and he's like, I've had some hacking problems with Mr. Flynn. So I'm going to have to shut down access to the MCP. And he's like, shut down access to the MCP? That's outrageous. And he's like, for 2 days, you will not be able to access. And he's like, these conditions, I can't work under these conditions. Oh my God. It's the end of my life. And you're like, it's 2 fucking days. Go home and make a pizza. Jesus Christ.
It's also Friday. So
yeah, I know. Right?
It's fine.
It's 2 days.
We'll see on Monday,
Sunday. It's like, he just goes back to his, girlfriend or whatever. And he's like, he's out of control. He's shutting off access to the MCP for 2 whole days. What am I supposed to do? And she's like, that is a bad problem. I know what to do. Let's blow off some steam by visiting my ex-boyfriend who takes off his shirt a lot.
He'll know.
Let's just go play some Frogger.
Let's go play some topless Frogger.
So, yeah, I Troned it up. No, I'm not sure where I'm landed on this one. I'm kind of in the middle where I thought it was cool to watch. It gives a little more context knowing it's a kid's movie. Like, it doesn't really have to make much sense because they probably don't care.
I thought it was cool as fuck, man. I just like visually, that's all. Like, we've talked a little bit about like, the plot is ridiculous. The lines are ridiculous. Lots of things are wooden, but I don't think it's not offensive enough to distract from the bright flashing lights and everything and the cool sheen on everything.
I will say I watched it with my kids and they're extremely critical of movies, the technology in movies. They're like, oh, this looks terrible, or like these are dumb looking, and they were like, oh, how old is this movie? Oh my God. And then it turned on, and there were a bunch of moments where Pearl would be like, that's cool.
Yeah, it passed the test with my kids too, who raised on not Tron. Like supposed to look quality
realistic.
It's much higher. And then to come back and see Tron for the first time, they were still hooked by it.
But I would have assumed that kids today would be too smart to watch something like this. But that's kind of interesting to hear, because
no, kids are dumb today too. I'm just
interesting.
Okay. But it's funny though, my kids loved the visuals of it, but at the end of the movie they were like, it was boring. That was a boring movie.
Yeah.
Wait, so he becomes the CEO now?
The end scenes, he just shows up on a helicopter. I was like, what?
Yeah, and then it ends with like just a panning shot of the skyline and then cut to black. I'm like, you didn't know how to end this movie, did you?
Yeah, you have no idea how to end it.
I do like that he came back with the evidence, which you guys said is just a dot matrix printed paper, but then the Dellinger sees it on his table and it just says, first written by Lynn. And he's like, well, I guess it's over for me, everybody.
He couldn't get the master computer to fucking erase that. He's like, well, I'm this close to controlling everything in the entire world, but could you erase those names for me? No, I cannot do that.
I need those for later.
Well, we kind of talked, I think we've kind of tap danced around the fact that the visuals were cool, but the story was boring.
I feel like they missed a giant opportunity. Make it a game. And you're like, oh, if you make it to level 10, you win and you defeat the master computer. And, he wrote this thing himself and he knows the inside of the game but is still treacherous. And going through the sequences in the game, like a player would on a game in real life, makes the plot happen. Like, that's the fucking missed opportunity there. Instead, they're just like, crap salad visual stuff where they're just like, highlight, tank guys, gladiator dudes, bikes. They just keep throwing them out there, but there's no interconnectedness to it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And it's kind of Running Man-esque if they did that, where he gets pulled into the game, but he wrote all the games, so he, like you said, has the inside knowledge. But the training is about getting through each harder level to eventually fight the final boss, which is the MCP.
Or he has human intuition and the guts or whatever. Like, he makes a judgment call. because we have to say that we're superior as people.
Man win.
You know, right? Because it's us against the computer. We can't let the computer win. So we have to have some moment where he's like, you know, I'm making a gutsy judgment call and it pays off. And that's how I defeat the computer, because of my humanity. My humanity helped defeat the digital beast, you know. Otherwise, what the fuck are we talking about? You know, he's just bumbling through a computer. What
if the MCP is a Nigerian prince? who is
That's your answer for everything. I'm not going to give you my money, Joshua.
No, I told that's a way better storytelling than what you just said right there. Like that,
right.
That's a better angle for Flynn. 100%, totally agree.
And it doesn't take that much. You know, no. I'm not a freaking genius. I'm not even a screenwriter. You know, like anyone sitting around a writer's room could fucking come up with that idea.
You've convinced me.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
my childhood
remake Tron
is built on lies.
Well, should we rate this sucker? Or?
You should probably
let's do it.
Sucker. Yeah.
What's the rating scale, Brian?
Yeah, what's the rating scale?
Let's say
Joshua did that on purpose.
It did.
An F is a health insurance application.
An actuary bot.
And an A is the MCP or Tron, or you're a digitized orange. Which one?
All right, I'll go first. I never go first. Visually, very surprising in that it still looks awesome. And it's from 1982, which is goddamn forever ago. I just kept waiting for it to look like shit or, you know, have a scene that looked like shit. And it didn't. It looked great. The people look cool, even though they just, you know, I don't know what the fuck. I guess it was rotoscoping to make their faces look ashen, and then these like neon accents around them pop everything and make them look more ashen. It was a really neat technique. Whoever came up with that idea for this movie, you know, gold star. The light cycle scenes were cool. The little tanks chasing them, you know, were cool. I just wish they could have strung it all together and had a coherent plot. And again, like I said, like Escape from New York, in a suspenseful, action-packed, supposedly movie, there's just a lot of fucking around. There's a lot of time spent where people are just like walking and like talking about stuff and like trying to find something and being like, where are we? Where is this? Oh, whoa. We are just out here in the digital computer playscape. And you're like, get the fuck moving. It's only 90 minutes, guys. We're running out of minutes. And, you know, the acting is bad for the most part, except Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges is really good. I feel bad for the woman in this movie. She has nothing to do at all except kiss dudes. You know, like
I feel like there's probably a lot of women in tech who look at this and are like, totally. Not much has fucking changed, guys.
I know. But yeah, visually, I would give it an A, actually. I think visually it's an A. And yeah, the movie itself, I would give like a C-, I think. Maybe bordering on a D+. If you put together the acting, the script, the missed opportunities in creating a coherent narrative, the missed opportunities in actually saying things about the digital world that was exploding back then, there's a lot of missed opportunities in here. So I would say it's probably a D+ on that front and an A as a visual film. So I am going to give it a C overall. Who's next? I gave it a C.
I'll go.
All right.
I like your rating. I think it's a good rating scale, but I'm gonna do a little bit higher. I think overall for me it's a B. It's like a solid B, and a lot of that's based on nostalgia. Yeah, I think coming in and I don't know how many times I've seen this movie. Again, I don't remember seeing it for the first time. It's just always been with me. So yeah. I think we had the big puffy VHS box back in the day with the sharp plastic edges when you open it up. Yeah.
Cut your hand if you
totally. So it's just always been there. So I think there's just a lot that I'm willing to forgive because, you know, 5-year-old to 8-year-old to 10-year-old Joshua,
totally, man.
Just like it just spoke to him. Like,
honestly,
but as an adult, I think I agree. I think this is best viewed with the sound off on a TV in a bar.
Yeah, right,
totally, you're just like doing
it.
something else. You're like, oh, fuck, Tron's on. Like,
and the poor bastards at the bar that are by themselves have something to look at.
Yeah, like, oh shit, this movie was awesome.
Do you guys know what this is? I think it's Tron.
that hip bar that just plays the old 80s movies with no sound on, you know?
That's a great example.
We've all been there, right? So yeah, I think from a story aspect, I think you're probably right. It's like a D+ at best. There's a lot of cool nuggets of ideas in there, and they're executed super poorly.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, I can forgive a lot, but they didn't. It didn't come together very well.
Yeah, just scattered or just throwing stuff out.
Yeah, they leaned a lot on the visual thing that they had.
Yeah.
And it didn't exactly set the world on fire. I mean, they got snubbed at the Oscars. It's one of the very first movies to rely almost entirely on CGI. And the movie making world just wasn't ready for it at the time. It was way, way, way ahead of its time. And so it didn't, it just, people knew about it because it was so visually striking, and just sort of over time built up this credibility, and it influenced a lot of things down the road, but never really got its due, except for now it's just considered to be like this cult classic that everybody has seen except for you two. And I think like when Disney Plus first spun up, Tron was like the first movie that they added into the calendar.
Oh, was it? That's funny.
Yeah. And I think it just comes at a great time in kids cinema. Like there were so many weird fucking crazy movies that were out there. The Dark Crystal, A Never-Ending Story, Tron, The Black Hole. Like these are all just
Peanut Butter Solution.
The Peanut Butter Solution.
Stop trying to make the Peanut Butter Solution happen. It's never gonna happen.
Harem Scarum.
This is not Canada.
So I just think this is one of those that it's not the greatest movie ever made, but it arrived at a very formative time in my and a lot of people's lives, and it will just always, it's timeless. It will just always be there. And so yeah, I think overall it's a B. Visually, I think it's an A+. It's just it speaks for itself. Like they were doing some really groundbreaking things. They didn't know exactly what they had, but they were just going with it, and they believed in it, and they made this thing that visually no one can like replicate today. So yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah. And to this day, we still are at that precipice, I feel like, between computers and people, where like now AI, it's like, could AI actually like get self-actualized and take over and decide humanity is not worth, the effort? I feel like it's still relevant, thematically, it just missed some opportunities.
If AI can solve climate change, then
I know.
Fuck, man, sign me up.
I mean, instead of cause climate change by fucking overheating the planet with data centers.
That's true. Humans, we're not making some very good decisions these days, guys.
We don't deserve
maybe
trees.
Computers are
we
the way
don't
to go.
deserve trees. I will say that.
Can't have nice things around here. Brian.
I'm gonna give it a B-. It's kind of like a boring video game, where like it looks cool, but like you like don't really care what the plot is, kind of thing. So, but I try to put myself in an 8-year-old space, and this is like I was trying to compare myself. Like, if I rewatched Willow, does that make sense to me? Like in my head when I was a kid, when I saw it, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and
I could see myself being a kid and being like, "This is really cool." Like the villains stand out, like you just give them a British accent, like evil, and their
evil.
colors red, bad, red,
bad,
but
British,
but
bad.
That makes sense to a kid, like that. This is the villain, and I would think it was really cool. I'm sure if I saw this as a kid, and I also give it credit for kind of, I could see how this was breaking a lot of ground for future animation type of stuff. Like, I think in some respects, this is probably a groundbreaking movie, and like to not know how to do something, but then push the boundaries to get it done, like in a visual effects space, kind of the same thing like Star Wars did with like puppetry and forced, perspective. Like you take that, and these things have been taken to the nth limit now. But I think I give it kudos for like Joshua said, like I've never seen another movie that's like this, like that takes this approach to visual effects, and that's cool. The story's plotting and kind of stupid and like amateurish, like the lines are dumb, and like even Jeff Bridges' lines like, "Oh, I got a headache," or whatever.
Yeah, they just
who
seem
got
like
the name of that?
throwaways.
Whatever, so just like dumb stuff,
Yeah,
And
that's a big
female-
door.
Yeah, it's a big door.
It's my favorite line.
Yeah, it certainly. I could see how this appeals to kids like the arcade generation. Like, come on, how easily could this be translated into a video game, right? Like, you can see the marketing behind this. Like Josh said, like, who gives a shit if this movie might like turn this into an arcade game in 5 minutes, and kids are going to play the hell out of this thing, which
and they
did.
They made more money than that.
More money. Yeah, exactly.
So I think, and plus, kudos to Disney for trying to get out of their funk. That was kind of cool. Like just watching that documentary slightly was like, man, you guys are making some real clunky garbage. Like they're like, fuck it, let's try something here.
Yeah.
So yeah, B minus. There's some cult classics I'll watch again. Yeah. Like even in hindsight, like if The Warriors was on, I'd probably let that play. But I don't know if I'd sit through Tron again. I mean, if it's on in a bar, muted, I'd be like, oh, I know this scene.
It's funny because I feel like The Warriors is another movie you could put on over a bar. And
yeah,
people are like,
start a bar, guys.
Yeah. Well, we've done a handful of those where it's like
it's no sound movies.
Like Dune's another one you could put on with no sound.
1,000%. Almost every episode of our podcast would make it great.
No, yeah. Escape from New York. Oh, it's Snake Plissken. Hey, it's Snake Plissken. Oh, yeah, give me a Miller High Life.
Okay.
All right.
What are we doing?
Yeah. What are we doing? Whose pick is it?
Oh, next week is Christmas.
Yeah, it's Christmas. Okay. All right. So this is
Holly Jolly.
This is one we've been talking about doing, and let's just do it, right?
This was the first one on the list.
Really?
Very first one. Slot number 1.
All right.
The Rabbit Fighters randomizer. We have still yet to do it.
Beep, boop, 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 beep, boop, 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 boop. Oh, who are we kidding? We're just going to pick it. It's it's Trading Places.
I'm afraid to do this one.
All right.
Trading Places.
I've never seen it. You guys have referenced it a billion times.
Yeah.
I've never yet seen it to this day.
It's got stuff. It's like, it's got stuff like when someone runs for politics and they come up with pictures of them in blackface in their high school yearbook.
Oh,
it's got stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a movie of its time. There's the jokes are.
I feel like
it's got a good cast.
It's got a great cast. It's funny. It's got cutting social commentary that's still valid, even more valid now than it was then. And it really, I think it has its heart in the right place.
And it's a Christmas movie.
It is.
Yeah. It's not like about Christmas. It takes place during Christmas.
It's a Christmas movie.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's do it.
This might be one I might not have to even watch. Like I've seen this movie so many fucking times.
I'll watch it again. Yeah.
I'll probably watch it again in passing, but I
haven't seen
if
it
it's
forever.
been in the tens of I've seen this movie. I've quoted it so fucking much. Looking good, Billy Ray. Feeling good, Lewis.
Oh, $5. I guess I'll go to the movie by myself. Half of that is from me.
Mortimer, your brother's not well. Fuck him.
Fuck him. Turn those machines back on.
It's one of the best lines in the whole movie. Fuck him.
Maybe I don't have to watch it.
Yeah, it's incredibly quotable.
We're gonna ruin it.
That's true. Well, hey, you guys want to do that next? The tunes.
Well,
let's do it again
next week. Let's see. We should do it
farewell
again.
programs
next week. Yeah.
See you next week. End of line. Sorry, I was late. I took my light cycle broke down. I've ran out of lasers, and I've got booger sugar. Let's party.
I have lasers coming out of my nipples.
Sorry, I was late. I was dancing with the worms.
It's the wrong movie.
It's never the wrong movie.
I'm a crossover character. I jump episodes because I am adding and subtracting and controlling and composing by pressing down a special key and plays a little melody.